Welcome back to episode 5 of Birdhouse Crime. It kind of occurred to me when I was starting this intro that I'm gonna have to start counting at the beginning of each episode, or I'm just gonna have to go check my channel because I've messed up recording these. I've messed up on episode 3. I think I said it was episode 4. So yeah, that's gonna have to stop because I can't keep up with that, to be honest. And I mean, I don't know how long I'm gonna do this, but if it goes on for a while, I'm definitely gonna lose count. But uh, I'm really excited about this week again. And you know what? It's my podcast, so I'm excited every week, obviously. But um, we're covering our first conspiracy theory episode, and it is also one of my all-time favorite historical topics, and was honestly, I think, my first true history fixation. And that is the Titanic and the conspiracy theories surrounding the sinking. Also, it is my second week having a guest. So huge thanks and warm welcome to my friend Emily for recording this with me. So with that being said, let's get into it. Okay, so we're talking about the Titanic conspiracies. Um, so I guess the best place to start is just some small background on the Titanic. So the RMS Titanic was a luxury steamship that sank in the early hours of April 15th on 1912 off the coast of Newfoundland in the North Atlantic after sideswiping an ice ship during its maiden voyage. Correct.
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 Well,
on board, there were 2,240 people total, including passengers and crew, and about 1,500 people lost their lives during the sinking.
allegedly.
Allegedly. I mean, I doubt they know the exact number, but it was somewhere around there. But we're talking about the different conspiracies about why, and I guess if the Titanic even sank. So the first one has to do with the Titanic's sister ship, the Olympic. And the Olympic was also part of the White Star Line and was another British luxury liner and was a sister ship to the Titanic. And two really fun facts. Its maiden voyage was less than a year before the Titanic's, and the funner fact is that on its maiden voyage, the captain was Edward J. Smith. Who was that, Emily? Can you remind us who Edward J. Smith was? Who was? Let me just recap. The captain of the maiden voyage of the Olympic, Edward J. Smith. Who else? What else was he again? I forgot.
The captain of the Titanic.
Oh, and how many voyages did the Titanic have?
About half.
Oh my God. I didn't think that was
allegedly.
Allegedly. But I thought that was I found that out last night, and I had to stop my research for a second because I mean, not that he obviously didn't wreck the ship on purpose or anything. And I mean, this is over 100 years ago, and so companies, liners like this, I'm sure that their captains, they didn't have hundreds of them. I'm sure there were just a few. So I doubt it was that rare. It's just kind of crazy.
What I wouldn't give to give a passenger of the Titanic an iPhone just to record everything for all of us.
But so the Olympic, being our first conspiracy, we're going to go into a little bit of her background. So, like I said, her maiden voyage was only a little less than a year before the Titanic's, but in September of 1911, on its fifth voyage, it collided with the HMS Hawke near southern England. And you said HMS meant what again?
Her Majesty's ship. So it
Her ma
belonged
okay,
to
like
Britain.
the Britain's army,
Yeah,
or
it belonged
Coast
to their
Guard.
monarchy. Yeah.
Okay. But so after that, um, both ships suffered quote unquote major damage, and it was determined that the wreck came from the suction of the Olympic pulling the hawk in, which like really doesn't matter. But I guess what you can take from that is that, again, I don't know if this was Smith or not, but whoever was the captain at that time was too close, is like
That's why
what they're saying.
you
Yeah.
always got to leave room for Jesus.
What they're saying by the Olympic pulling the hawk in is essentially saying, like, low key, it's the Olympics' fault. They were the one who was too close. Um, but the reason those two are so tied with being sister ships, and oops, almost gave it away, that they were potentially switched. Um, Meaning the Olympic went down as the Titanic, and the Titanic never went down. Uh, so that's a theory.
Well, they didn't have iPhones, so we don't have any proof.
No photos, no proof. Um, but the reason that this theory holds weight is because, so after the accident that the Olympic had with the Hawk, it was believed that someone decided that it was potentially too damaged to be profitable, therefore switched the damaged ship to hopefully get insurance money and
So are you
um
saying there was only one ship that the
no.
Olympic was repaired and then
No, I'm saying so the theory is that before the Titanic set sail, it or before, yeah, before the Titanic set sail, the ship that took off was not the Titanic. It was the Olympic.
okay.
And so the reason behind the Olympic setting off instead of the Titanic, and like I said, this is a conspiracy theory, and it's a conspiracy theory that has a lot of holes in it. But there's just a lot of Titanic conspiracy theories, and it's the first one that we're talking about. But the objective in this would be that the White Star Line potentially saw it as a way to discard of their damaged ship while it was under like insurance of a brand new ship. So when it wrecked, or if something happened, the money they would get back would be a lot better than if it was the Olympic. Because also in exchange to that, so I
You're
mean,
saying
obviously,
when the Titanic set sail, it was already damaged because it was the
it
Olympic.
was the Olympic, yes.
Oh.
Because so in that, then now I can't, I don't, there's a, like I said, there's a lot of holes in this. So they had, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what they knew, but like, let's say, quote unquote, they had no idea there was an iceberg that the Titanic was going to hit. It wouldn't make any sense because, like, what do you think's going to happen? So it just kind of seems like maybe they were trying to like use this rundown ship and keep like, if the Titanic's new, the Titanic's up to date. Like they did build, like, this theory suggests that there is a Titanic and there is an Olympic. And so if the Olympic goes off and that's what wrecks to the iceberg, then they still have this brand new, beautiful ship that has no problems. And they have gotten rid of the issue, the Olympic, and it wrecks. So now they got all the insurance money from it too. So, like, I mean, like I said, it's got a lot of holes in it. It doesn't make a lot of sense because how would they know there was an iceberg? Why would they want to kill 1,500 people?
Well, I don't
Like,
think the iceberg they hit was the only iceberg. I think that there were many icebergs, so they knew
well, and
on the route they were going.
that's a big thing too, is like, um, maybe it was like kind of by design. And that was something that started to click to me last night when I found out Captain Smith was the same one on the Olympic. Was I was like, maybe this was a bigger conspiracy. Like maybe they knew about the icebergs. Maybe they knew it was at least like a dangerous trip. Like, and that'll go into the next theory we're going to talk about, which is the JP Morgan one, which is some more insurance stuff. But I think you could really tie those two together with like it not necessarily being like they knew the Titanic was going to wreck and be the disaster it was, but maybe they knew it wasn't as safe as they were claiming it to be.
Yeah, and I think that the route going across that Atlantic Ocean was probably a little bit more dangerous than maybe the routes they were taking before then.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, even, and like the movie's obviously quote unquote fiction, but a lot of the things in the movie, like conversation with the captain and other of the like elites on board, a lot of those weren't fiction and were by account. And so we know that the Titanic did choose to speed up and was trying to make time different than what their original, like make a time getting to New York than what their original time was supposed to be to like test her speed or whatever. Um, like someone brought that to Captain Smith that like it would make like newspaper headlines or something in the morning if like the Titanic was going faster than it was supposed to or whatever. And because that is something like I've done like a little bit of research on Captain Smith, and he seems like he was like a really good captain, a really good guy. Like they offered him a lifeboat, I know at the end, and he chose not to get on it. Um, so I think he regretted some of the decisions he made, but I do know it was proposed to him to speed the ship up, and I think he did ultimately decide to do that. Um, so maybe, like I don't know, like it definitely seems like they knew that they were in a treacherous kind of area.
Yeah, I would agree.
But going off of that into the JP Morgan stuff. Um so JP Morgan was supposed to be on the Titanic and he backed out quite literally before boarding the ship. Like he was there. You knew that. We've talked about this before, right? Like
Yeah, like he gambled away his tickets or something.
who got him? Just kidding. That's fiction. Uh,
Based on true events, though.
based on I mean yeah, based on true events though. But JP Morgan was a millionaire banker who planned to be on the Titanic, was supposed to be there, and literally backed off or backed out of going shortly before the Titanic took off. Like he was there, he was at the site. Like it wasn't like he had the trip planned, something came up and he canceled. Like he went to get on the Titanic and was like, never mind.
There's a chance he stepped on and stepped right off.
Yeah. I mean, who we don't know. Um, but that's just, I mean, I again kind of like same thing with the White Star Line. There's no way the White Star Liner or JP Morgan like actually caused the Titanic to sink or made it hit the iceberg. Like there was I mean that's quite literally impossible
There were there
for
were
them
multiple
to
insiders who were in on this job.
but
It wasn't just one man.
but JP Morgan was a very, very smart man. And he would have been one of like who would have been considered the elites with like Jacob Astor and the other men on board who like quite literally helped design the ship. Or like even if a lot of these men, these like the elites who were on it, weren't necessarily people who helped design the ship, but they were kind of people who like bankrolled it and were like, we want to be on this ship. We're going to put our money towards this and we're going to be on it. And JP Morgan was like kind of one of those guys who like was like, I need to be on that ship. And then he just didn't go on it. Yet three of his rivals, Jacob Astor, Isidore Strauss, and Benjamin Guggenheim.
Yeah.
Guggenheim?
Yeah, Guggenheim.
Guggenheim. Um, three of his like business rivals all did get on the ship, and all three of them also perished on the ship. Um, and again, I don't believe there was any way that JP Morgan could have like legitimately made them die or knew that the ship was going to crash, but like these were people who like had an inside to people that built the ship or knew the captain or knew like knew the big guys at like the
Yeah.
top of this operation.
And it might have been one of those things where somebody gave him a little inside hint into what was going
Like,
on.
hey, this boat don't got enough lifeboats and you're going through like there's a term for when there's a bunch of icebergs. Like there's a term for that. I don't know what it is. But like my theory with this like if the JP Morgan one is true, then I think someone just gave him some insider information that scared him enough to be like, I'm not getting on. Like literally, what was the Titan? Like the one guy who was like, I'm not getting on. He didn't get on. Like I think JP Morgan just might have been that guy that was like high enough to hear information and maybe he just got like sketched out and maybe he didn't tell them for like, kind of a purpose or maybe he just like was embarrassed to be like, I'm scared to get on this ship and I don't want to tell anyone, you know?
Yeah, and I think it, could be one of those things where he had a buddy or even a stranger just said, "Don't get on the ship," and he didn't get on the ship. And then he decided to start the Illuminati.
You think JP Morgan started the Illuminati?
No, I don't, but it seems like if someone told me
Seems like it.
don't get on that ship, and people were telling me this insider info, and I was so important, they were telling me this insider info,
Kind of like the
then
guy
I
in
would want to
Charlie
start a
and
club.
like who's the guy in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory that goes and whispers in all the kids' ears? Like him. He was never explained.
Yeah, he
Do you know what I'm
was
talking about?
at the end of the movie.
Wait, he was?
Yeah, he was like he worked for Willy Wonka.
Oh,
And they were trying to find the kid that was trusting the most to give the chocolate factory to.
have you seen the clip where in the first one they whack the kid in the head with the little like swing door thingy where he's singing the Candyman can.
Like, okay.
And like the
Yeah,
the
in the
OG
candy shop.
Willie with
And
Gene Wilder, like
yeah,
Gene
and they're in the
Wilder's not in the
candy
scene.
shop before he finds the ticket.
Yeah, and he swings the little like door open and he hits the kid in the face.
No, I haven't seen that. Is that like actually put in the movie,
No,
the
it's
edit?
like it's in the movie. Like so
Oh, it's
he's
not a
singing.
blooper.
No, it's not a blooper. He's singing like the Candyman can song.
Okay, you'll
You're
have to send
all
me that
you're all
later.
so welcome for that. Sorry.
He
No, it's
also
okay. I want to go off topic
helped
in this.
JP Morgan start the Illuminati, so
Who, Gene Wild?
no, the Candyman.
Or I don't know the history on that.
No, I don't know either. I was just making that up.
Okay, but so going off of the JP Morgan one, um, the reason why, I mean, like, again, this is all just like conspiracy, nothing that like could ever be proven against like those three dudes. But the reason why he opposed them was that they were opposing the creation of the Federal Reserve, which I just think is really interesting because of John Astor. Should we do the John Astor story now or later?
Do it now.
Do it now. Okay. So the reason why that's interesting. So JP Morgan, it actually makes me really stand by JP Morgan because if he was saying they opposed the Federal Reserve, that would mean that he was in favor. JP Morgan was in favor of the Federal Reserve. And that's just really interesting because this is 1912. We're going to backtrack about 100 years. So, like I said, the richest man on the ship who goes down in it was not friends with JP Morgan, was Jacob Astor. And Jacob Astor was the richest man on the ship, who at the time his net worth was $87 million, which was in 2022 equivalent to $2.64 billion. So he was a wealthy man. He him and his family was known for business, real estate. They were developers, investors, and Jacob Astor himself was in the Spanish and American War. So I don't really know too much about Jacob himself, but what I do know is how Jacob's family got his fortune.
How did he get his
And
fortune?
how I'm so glad you asked. Thank you so much for asking. So, Jacob Astor's I think third or fourth great grand it was either like third or fourth great grandfather was John Jacob Astor, which I am even going to admit I probably for a long time thought they were the same person because you learn about them both in history, and you've got John Jacob Astor and you've got Jacob Astor. So John Jacob Astor is his great whatever grandfather, who his early life in New York was in the early 1800s, and he tried a bunch of different careers. And this was the time where nobody was nobody. There were nobody was famous. You don't have any sort of there's not celebrities at this time. And so he's trying politics, he's trying business, he's trying real estate, he's trying all of these different trades to just try and make money. He sells drugs and trades drugs for a while until Aaron Burr moves back to the States. And Aaron Burr, I don't expect most people to know who Aaron Burr is, but Aaron Burr was our third vice president. I sang the song in my head. I only had to sing three of them though. Um, he was the VP to Thomas Jefferson, and Thomas Jefferson eventually tried him for treason because we acquired Louisiana during the Louisiana Purchase. Burr goes to Louisiana and says, "Hey, you guys want to succeed with me as your king, right? You guys hate T. Jeff." And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then they go tell Jefferson, whatever. He gets tried for treason, moves to Europe for a decade or so, moves back and becomes BFFs with John Jacob Astor, and they start an amazing real estate business. And that's how the richest man on the ship got his money.
So it just got passed down for a couple of generations.
It's literally like some Murdoch shit. The Murdochs?
No.
You didn't watch that on Netflix?
No.
The lawyer dad in South Carolina that killed his son and wife after the boating accident thing.
He had a great 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 grandfather who passed down some money from real estate.
No, but this dude, the Murdoch dude, I'll have to text you some of this stuff. But so his name is Alec Murdoch. I can't believe you haven't heard of this. This was a year ago. Um, he was on trial for killing his wife and son. But 2 years prior to that, his son was in a boating accident that killed another girl. But the Murdoch family in South Carolina was have been lawyers for decades and decades and shit. Literally the courtroom that they tried him in South Carolina, they had to take down the photo of his great grandfather or something like that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I mean I'm not kidding. It's quite literally that.
And the son he killed was
Well, supposedly he didn't, but he did.
which is the trial over or is it still going on?
The trial's over. He's in jail. Trial was like a year ago.
He was guilty.
Netflix, yeah. So there's two seasons on Netflix called like the Murdoch trials or whatever. And the first one's about like the boating accident thing. And then the second one that it literally just came out like a week or two ago. But it's about kind of his trial and stuff. And he has one son who's not in prison that there's kind of also some stuff on, which is something that's going to be talked about in my monthly episodes because they just came out, like I said, with the new season of that. So I'm going to follow that. But we're talking about the Titanic. So
Oh yes, we are.
the Titanic. So
So
um
guy who has a lot
in
of
case you
money, friends
yeah.
with a politician, passed down the money, rich guy gets on the ship. What's next? What's next to the story? To the conspiracy.
Oh, but so what I was saying was so another conspiracy kind of relating to the JP Morgan one is there's alternatives that there were other people that could have potentially wanted those three men. So Jacob Astor, Isidore Strauss, and Benjamin Guggenheim. There was a theory that the Rothschild banking family had was actually the ones that had something to do with that. Did you hear? Have you heard that one?
What did you say their name was?
The Rothschild,
Like a Roth IRA?
Roth,
Yeah.
Rothschild.
Oh, okay.
You know of them?
No, I know what your retirement account is called. I think it's a retirement account.
Something like that. Yeah, I think I know it. Yeah. Um, but they are. I don't know if I can say all this, but I'm gonna say it anyway.
Just bleep out
They're
what you need to bleep out.
they're quite literally why we have the like I don't know what you even call this, but you know how we have the like standard or superstition. This is the word I'm blanking on right now. The whatever that like Jews like money.
Stereotype.
Yeah, stereotype. I'm a terrible person. Um,
I
they
and by the way, everybody likes money.
we all do. Trust me, I'm not Jewish and I like money. But they were a Ashkenazi Jewish family that dates back to like the early like 1800s or something like that. Why are you laughing? Do you know who I'm talking about now?
Was that their last name?
Yes.
Ash Kenzie.
No. So their that's the
Is it
like divi
Ashkenazi or whatever? Wait, look up the spelling for that and then edit this, please.
I just
Ash
can't.
Kenzie. How many shots have you had?
None. I just don't know. I wrote it out how it's spelled.
Look at your eyes. Let me look at your eyes.
I
I'm
wrote it
sitting here
out.
stone cold sober.
I wrote it out how it's spelled. I just don't know how to say it. But that Ashkenazi,
I think it's Ashkenazi. No,
Ashkenazi.
that okay, you need to edit this part out.
I'll have to send it to you. I can't do
We're
it.
not getting canceled.
Anyways, they
Just
were
say
a
Jewish.
they were a very wealthy Jewish banking family. And they are why we have the um stigma around Jews being greedy and liking money. Um, and they have conspiracies dating back to, like I said, as big as like the early 1800s, and that go into them controlling the world's wealth and financial institutions and encouraging governments or discouraging governments outside of things because of their financial wealth. And we know that that does happen in the government to like not always to the greater good. And so that could be something that like if they were potentially tied up in this, like either they knew about something or had a hand in something and didn't like just like kept quiet about it, because like I said, it's a ship and it hit an iceberg. You can't make a ship hit an iceberg. Like,
I mean, whoever
so
was steering.
Edward, what are you doing?
I'd crash a ship into an iceberg if
Well,
somebody gave me enough money.
they do have reports that like and they show this in the movie too. And I mean, obviously this is a movie and we are not we don't work on ships. I don't know what ships are supposed to do, but neither of them had like binoculars or anything to see forward with. And I guess like that was true and that they should have. Um, but I don't know. I mean, like, I don't really know how good that does you. Like, I don't know how far out binoculars see or how long you need to like know before you can start steering a ship in a different direction. Because even like the Titanic sinking was such a big deal in itself because quote unquote the unsinkable ship or whatever, like, and I think it's like, and I should have like looked some more of this up honestly before this, but so when it hit the iceberg, there's like however many like compartments on the bottom of the ship that can fill with water before the ship sinks, right?
Yeah.
Um, and the Titanic didn't, I mean, it didn't appear to be struck that badly, but I guess it's just the fact that they kind of, and they demonstrate this in the movie, and you can see it when they explain it, is like it just dot the whole way down the ship. You know what I mean? So, yes, like the Titanic could have a certain amount of compartments filled, but could this iceberg have possibly like just dashed so far down that that was just too many compartments?
Possibly. Did the Titanic sink from the front or the
Possibly.
back? Like, did it go
Um,
head first into the water or back first into the water?
it went tail first in the water and split in half. Remember?
But
Titanic
if
broke
the
in half.
front of the boat hit the iceberg,
But
then wouldn't the
it didn't hit head on. It um I wrote this in one of the first pages of notes. I don't know where it is. But I think the term they used was it sideswiped, which even like same thing if you think about the movie, like it's like it just I mean if it sideswiped, it's not like the ship ever like I mean it hit it, but it's just on the side. Like there was never a true collision, I guess. It's just kind of like you ran into it on the side. Like if you hit a curb or something. Like
okay,
how if you hit a curb on your tire,
your
it's just
tire
on the
doesn't
side.
pop? Hmm.
It's just on
Hmm.
like it's just like on the side of your tire, where you can see it like rub down or whatever. I guess it's like kind of like the same concept.
Okay.
But I'm
Sure.
not
I don't believe it yet, but
So what do you do we think the Titanic I think the Titanic sank. I just think it's a really interesting conspiracy theory and I certainly didn't know all of the ins and outs of like the Olympic and that the white like I guess just like we look back at the Titanic now, like I remember when I first learned about it and you're like, oh, this was like the ship. This was like the voyage. And it's just like maybe we just like don't learn enough like in like what phase that we were in history, of like they didn't have enough like literally number wise, there were not enough lifeboats to save the people on board. And that's insane. It seems like you're just doing that to prove a point and like you don't care about the people on board, which kind of going back to like the thing where you're like, oh my God, they would never do this to kill so many people on board. It's like they didn't even have the regulations to save them. So who's to say? Who's to say? They had no intentions of ever having to save everyone on board. So who's to say?
Well, I think certain people knew and certain people didn't. Like I can see some of the crew, the higher up crew, people who are steering and manning the ship from above. Few of them having sort of an inside look, and maybe even in the middle of the night, somebody who did have an inside look, had the steering wheel in hand. Because the captain's not always right there, steering wheel in hand. They take shifts.
Well, no, and I mean like even I mean I'm sure they still have, I'm sure it's not as like manual now, but like you see in the movie or like old ships like that, we knew they had like literal watchmen that are up on like the, I don't know, like a little post or whatever that has like a little seating and they can like look out or whatever. And that's what I was saying was like those two men supposedly, like for whatever reason, didn't have their binoculars that night. And they're the quote unquote lookout for whatever's ahead, you know?
Yeah.
And they, because this is like I was saying, like part of the movie does show things to truth. Like, and I do know that they spotted the iceberg like way too short in time than they should have been able to. But like, I think icebergs are like that though. Like, aren't they supposed to be really hard to spot or whatever? Like, because I know it was, they sank April 15th, but they hit April 14th and it was like really late at night. So it also would have been really dark. Like,
Well, yeah, there's no lights out in the
and
middle of the ocean.
ice is white, but I think ice also looks pretty dark. Yeah, like it's literally pitch black. But I don't know. What are
Oh, your internet was going, or my
oh,
internet was going
sorry.
again.
No, it's okay.
Also, we have 2 minutes left on the recording. I don't know if it's gonna let us record again, but we might have to like leave a meeting and come back.
Okay. How does it? It's fine. I can edit them later, but why does it do that?
Do what? I don't know. It says upgrade, and so that's why I was like, oh,
Oh.
that's when
Well,
you have to
whenever I
pay.
saved it, saved to like MP4 or whatever, so I can just like put them into my app and then edit them. I'll just have to listen a little more because like what I normally do is like whenever I'm recording, have like my little like segments and I'll kind of end them and then kind of restart, and then clip them where it feels natural. But did you have any Titanic conspiracies you had or wanted to share? Because I know you'd brought up the JP Morgan one, but you brought up another one.
I saw one earlier. I don't remember where it was, so I can't really cite any sort of sources that
That's okay.
we actually found the Titanic in the 50s
Okay.
and nobody said anything because they wanted to investigate it. They used technology to lift the Titanic up, which at the time was whole. And after they were finished investigating, they dropped it back down, and that's
And
when it
it
split.
broke.
Yeah.
Okay. That's really interesting. I've seen like a lot of, I haven't seen that one, but I've seen like two separate ones about like the Titanic being cursed, and that's why. So one of them had to do with like, and I don't have like notes in front of me on this, so I don't know them. But one of them had to do with like a mummy's curse or something and like ancient hieroglyphs and stuff like that. And then the other one had to do with like something biblical with where there's like, and again, this would have been a really good one to look up actually. There's some like, I guess, like prophecy or hi, welcome to intermission. This was my first episode recording with Zoom, and I'm not very computer savvy. So, this is a bit of an abrupt cut. But welcome to the channel. I don't know. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Okay, Ashley was talking about some prophecy we
Back
did
to the
get cut off.
Titanic.
We're getting right back into it
Getting
with
right back into Titanic conspiracies. After that,
just a recap on all the conspiracies.
yeah. So, potentially it sank how it did. Potentially it was switched with a sister ship, the Olympic. Potentially it just sank, unfortunately, and JP Morgan had his suspicions, didn't tell anyone. Could have been him or someone else. But as I was saying, we're getting into some more about our outlandish theories, which some of them date back to, and these are not ones that I have insane notes on. So we're just going to explore
Going off
these.
of vibes and
Going off
memories of TikToks.
exactly, exactly. Um, but so one of them is, like I said, nothing to back this up at all, except that it is in my sources. I believe this one comes from actually the History Channel, where it just is talking about the different Titanic conspiracies. But one of the larger, kind of crazier ones is that it was prophesized in like ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics.
Oh,
Yeah.
and someone said one day the ship will sink and it'll be called the
I mean,
Titanic.
I don't remember the exact story, but it's like there's been a lot of like there's also like a biblical prophecy, I think, about like a ship hitting with an iceberg or something. So like I think the Egyptian one was like kind of similar to that, where there was just some prophecy about a like like all of them had like the tie of it being a maiden voyage of a big passenger like liner hitting an iceberg. So those were like the three main points was like maiden voyage, passenger liner, iceberg. And there were several prophecies from different like outlets of the world that came out with that. I guess is like something that's weird to note. A weird note. Whether like you can't really like tie it to anything or to any conspiracy. Up with other than just the fact that like, oh hey, this is something that like our god or our religion or someone in our like little, like I said, like this literally goes like there wasn't like ancient Egyptian like curse thing related to it, like where, and I guess like the interesting thing to that is like those weren't people with like any sort of motive, like they didn't have any reason to like say like, oh, we have this prophecy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know, just like a bunch of like all of the ones that we talked about already, I think are like the big ones that are actually relative to the story. But it's just interesting how many there are that like aren't even that relative.
And you know what else is kind of interesting is that until they actually found the Titanic, um, a lot of the survivors of the Titanic, everyone said that they were lying about the ship cracking in half. Like we didn't
Yeah.
know about that until they found it. And when did they find it? The 80s, 90s?
Um, I'm about to have to look it up. It was so Titanic came out in 1997. It was found in the 80s. And it was found by a guy who, this is a really interesting story too. And again, I'm just recanting this from my knowledge. I probably should have looked this up. He was a guy, hold on. I'm gonna look up just like how and when it was found, and so I can get his name and explain a little better. So hold please. We'll play some Jeopardy music here. Robert Ballard, that was his name. I knew that. And it was in 1985. So 12 years before the movie came out. Was it quote unquote finally discovered. And that is insane because just to recant this, Titanic sank in 1912. So like 1912, 1985, almost 100 years that it
Yeah.
was missing. Um, but Robert
But
Ballard,
I
and
don't know
again,
if that's almost 100 years. It's
how
like
is it?
70 years.
I mean, yeah, like almost, that's almost 100. I mean, 2012 would have been 100 years. So,
Yeah.
I mean, like
But
30,
we're not even 30 years old, so
like 30, 40
that's
years shy of. So yeah, I would say that we would say 30's young, right? Let's say that's a little shy of say that's a
we're
little
not
shy.
30.
Thank God. Um, you old ass motherfuckers. Just kidding. Um, but so Robert Ballard, and again, I'm not reading this from any sort of citation or anything. Kind of wish I would have. But so he worked for something with the government, like he wasn't a part of the military or whatever. Here it is. This is in National Geographic, and I haven't read this before I'm recording. So if I hate it, I hope I don't, but because it's in here. But so National Geographic, this page says Titanic was found during secret Cold War Navy mission. And essentially what that was, so Robert Ballard, I don't remember the exact missions he was on, but he was working for the government or military in some sort of way, which I guess must have had something to tie with this because he was given the expenses and the ability. Because, like we know now, with how the Titan recently disappeared, the Titanic is very, very deep in the ocean and very dangerous to explore, excuse me. Um, and the guy who discovered the Titanic only got his chance to like be down there and discover because he was working on something, excuse me. He was working on something else. And I'm trying to scroll through this to find out what it was, but I'm sorry, I don't remember what it is. I'll put it in the link. Um, but he was only allowed to go down there and explore or try to find like he wanted to find the Titanic, and whoever it was that he was working for in the government or military told him that he could do it if he was working on whatever the mission was that they had him on. And that's how he ended up finding the Titanic, which I also think is really interesting. Like we were never looking for it. This one, I'm sure he wasn't the only one. Like there's a lot of people who have the like specific interest in the Titanic, but we only found it because this one dude was like, I'm willing to work for this organization, this company, whatever. I love San Francisco. Uh, Emily's changing her backgrounds. I'm sorry. Y'all won't see that. Um, but he really only found these things because he was willing to work for this company and kind of like a trade-off to be able to have the access to the information and machinery and technology that he needed to do the research he wanted to in exchange of doing the job that they had him doing, which in itself alone is just really interesting. And I feel like I've been spending a lot of this podcast doing a lot of like true crime and stuff, which is a huge thing I'm interested in, but it's not only what I'm interested in. And I
It's
love
not
his,
only true crime, it's also false crime.
yeah, I love false crime too. Um, don't get it twisted. But I also wanted to be able to talk about history and conspiracies like this, where like this isn't crime, but it is, right? Like it's, I
It
mean,
could
I guess
be.
it's just conspiracy, you know. I can't wait to talk about JFK though.
Is that what's next?
Probably not next. I just want he was a little bit in the last episode with like the extra bullet or whatever stuff. So I'm just really on a JFK hype right now.
I think that you should do like a 3-part series.
Oh yeah, we're definitely gonna do some series, but me and you are gonna cover some cults first. Now that we know how to do this, we can do Jonestown.
Yeah. And Heaven's Gate.
Your Heaven's Gate is your topic. I know very, very little about. I mean, I know about Heaven's Gate, and I don't. I guess like very little is probably incorrect because
It's very cliche.
I probably know a lot more than like I probably know a lot more than what most people know. Not like that, but like it's not a cult that like Jonestown, I can tell you from day one to day last day what happened. I can't do that with Heaven's Gate. So that'll be a really fun episode for us to do. But we're gonna drink the Kool-Aid together next time.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
We can get some Four Locos.
Yeah, next time I can actually drink, I think.
But yeah, do you have any I think we did it. I think we did the episode, but I am you know, if you do you have anything you want to say for the end of it? I am or talk about whatever, in regards to the Titanic and her sinking or conspiracy, like anything, you know? That's what we're here for. We're here to share.
Uh, I was gonna play the Jeopardy music.
You what?
And then I was gonna play the Jeopardy music and the ad came up. Ah,
You guys can't see the sunglasses right now, but she has on
I
like
know.
the Snoop Dogg glasses. We'll get visual in here one day when things are a little more concise or like for fun episodes, but right now,
Titanic, I think it's you know, just one of those things that people don't know a lot about, but they think they know a lot about. And I think a lot of the conspiracies are starting to become more popular over the past year or so. And so
well, I
I'm
think
glad
so
we're able
too.
to cover it.
I'm glad too. And I think like because you and we've known each other for so I didn't introduce you. So we'll do an outro introduction. This is Emily. I really should have done this at the beginning. I'm so sorry. But this
Oh,
is
it's okay.
Emily.
I can introduce myself.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm Ashley's friend, bestie. Um, we met on an internship at Disney in 2017, and we were roommates. And the
They
rest
were
is history.
roommates.
Yeah, we continued to work at Disney for the following couple years, and then um, she moved back to North Carolina, and then I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. So that's where I currently am now.
Yeah, so this is not an in-person episode with each other, but um Emily's one of my biffles.
Yeah, and we're learning learning how to use Zoom.
Yeah,
So
this is an experiment. Again, this is another first for us. So if it sounds bad or if the edits are odd, I'm sorry. I'm still learning and I was saying this earlier, but I just want to do this as long as like people are listening and as long as I'm having fun with it. And I love having my friends on. Like, I mean, this is like Emily, like I know we're doing a podcast right now, but this is like we've had these conversations so many nights with absolutely no one listening to us. Like,
yeah,
so it's fun like for me to like sit down and record this stuff that I care about with my friends.
I know we haven't seen each other in like a year and a half too.
I know it's really sad, but we're gonna hang out like next month, right?
Yeah, let's see. Next month, October.
Yeah,
I have to look at my.
we said
I think
like
I have 2 weekends open.
Yeah, I think we said like this I want to say 16th or something like that. Maybe we can do like a live episode or
This
something.
the 16th is a Monday.
Oh, maybe you said like the weekend. Maybe it was like the weekend prior to that. I don't
Oh, the
remember.
13th. Like, yeah. Hold
Is that
on.
when we talked about?
No, because I'll be in California. Because 16th is in like 2 weeks. Let's
Time
see.
moves too fast when you get old, guys. That's another thing. Um, they are not lying. Your parents, they're not lying about that. Time moves too fast.
I'll look at stuff later.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I think we covered most of the Titanic conspiracies, and like I said, I don't really know if I necessarily like believe any of these like wholeheartedly. It's just stuff that like
Yeah, I
I
think we
think
got the movie ingrained into our head like way too much. Like that is
yeah,
our canon.
yeah, no, like we were talking about this before we started the podcast earlier. It was like how that thing's going around now right now about like ask your man about the Roman Empire, and it's like what is the female Roman Empire? Like I learned about the Titanic. I distinctly remember for the first time in fifth grade, had never seen the movie. We were just like reading some book about it. Like, I didn't know anything about Jack and Rose. I didn't know anything about the love story. I just learned about the sinking and was like, this is everything my life is about now. I went home and told my parents about it, and they were like, there's a movie. And I was like, there's a movie. And I I mean, it's everything since then's just history. But it is, I mean, like, what's weird about that is, though, is that so many people have that exact story. Like, not to a T, but like, oh, I learned about the Titanic and I was obsessed with it. Like, it doesn't spawn from the movie. And you were talking about, the movie that you were looking up? It was like, a year or so after like the actual Titanic event, a movie came out and it was like a huge hit, but it was like about the sinking and stuff. Didn't you just look that up or something? It was like the first movie about the
No,
Titanic.
it was like very similar to the 1990s. It was like a 1953 version by the same movie studio, but it was made in 1953. It's a black and white film and it doesn't look very good.
No, I'm
It's
sure.
all
I
on
mean, I'm sure
sets.
it's not, but
It's not
like,
actually on the Titanic like the 1997 was.
yeah, they brought it back up. What is it? She's just like, oh, looks
They
exactly
did a quick little repair
like
for the 1997 movie.
just brought her back up. But I do think it's interesting that it's one of those topics that like doesn't die. You know what I mean? Like whether you learn about it through the movie or through history, or like I was saying, like bringing up that example, like it's been this kind of fixation since it happened. And like that's a like I don't want to say like, oh my God, that's crazy, but like it it's an event that has stuck with people for whatever reason. Would you agree with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
But I think we covered it.
Yeah, I think that we got most of it. Most of it all covered. We got the conspiracies covered, that's for sure.
Well, I suppose that's all we can really cover for this episode on Titanic conspiracies. Um, I hope to do a lot more episodes like this in the future, and I'm really excited that I'm starting to cover new things and go into different branches of interest within what I want to do on the podcast. Um, And I'm also really excited to get guests on, and I hope that's been something that you guys have enjoyed as well as listeners. And I'm really excited for upcoming episodes. But that is all for this week, and I'll see you guys next Sunday.